What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Hashtag BYP from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clemensbridge Road, and Scoots Liquors as well. Check them both out online. Our NFL Insider Lloyd Vance at Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us as well as we continue our look around the NFL as we break down all these conferences, all these divisions today. The sexy AFC South. And I say it tongue in cheek. And we'll get into some of the big news as well over the last 24, 48 hours in the trenches in the NFL. But Lloyd, always good to touch base with him, my friend. And as I said, a sexy AFC South that on paper just looks like just nonsense, right? Until we start to kind of look at maybe Jacksonville coming off a nice little run last year with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peters. So as Doug Peterson, as we kind of take a look at the division to start, let's start with those aforementioned Jacksonville Jags, 9-8, obviously got the win against the Chargers in a crazy game, right? And then they ultimately lost in the divisional round to Kansas City, 27-20. So what's your thoughts on Jacksonville going into this season? And what about your expectations of this Jag squad?
Well, Q, when you look at this division, you definitely have to say, okay, it is not maybe putting some lipstick on a pig, but
Right.
um, you never know. Any given Sunday, and these teams can step up. And you talked about a key team coming out of this division, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had consecutive seasons where they had the first overall pick, Trevor Lawrence and Trayvon Walker. And you saw this team last season start using some of that talent that they had stockpiled down there. Doug Peterson comes over with that Super Bowl pedigree. And this team started kind of clicking, particularly at the end of the season. They scored 400 points or more, which is almost 24 points per game, 10th in the NFL, which was nice. And defensively, they only allowed 350, which was 12th in the league. So, they did a nice job. They won a playoff game. And, you talk about Trevor Lawrence, and he's growing, he's maturing, and he's starting to look like that guy that everybody thought he'd be coming out of Clemson. So, a lot of excitement in Jacksonville, and we'll see if they're able to keep this going.
So Jacksonville opening odds to win their division, it was at 155, minus 155. Now it's sitting at 160, minus 160 to win the Super Bowl plus 2,500. But here's something interesting. We always talk about wins and losses, the win total. Jacksonville right now, kind of a unique position, right? They won that ninth game last year. They ultimately got the playoff win, but odds makers have them installed right around 10 and a half wins. And I think sometimes and this is just my opinion, I've seen teams that have arrived, say like a year early, so to speak, but then it seems as though they kind of take that step back. I don't know what we're going to make of the other three teams respectively, but you know this, when you make the playoffs, when you play as well as you had, your schedule is going to be a little more of a daunting test. Now, they open up the season against the Colts on the road. They're slight favorites in that one. But 10 and a half, to me, this is a division that reeks of 9 wins, is probably going to claim the title in the AFC South. So I'm actually leaning towards the under when it comes to Jacksonville's win total.
Oh, Q. I may have to say they're going to probably hit that number right on the nose. You may get that push. 10 wins or so seems very possible. Don't forget they brought over Calvin Ridley coming back from suspension for gambling. He comes over from Falcons. He's finally able to play. Christian Kirk made that big jump last year. They give Evan Ingram the bag, and there's a lot of weapons around Trevor Lawrence, and they're trying to fix that offensive line. We'll see if they're able to do it. But this is a young, exciting team.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, right? Ingram over 1,100 yards. Who would have thought he would have get cash in as opposed to his former teammate Saquon Barkley? Lawrence over 4,000 yards. You look at his numbers last year: 25 touchdowns, I believe 8 or 9 interceptions. He was only sacked 27 times. So they did a good job of keeping Trevor Lawrence upright. I mean, this year, if he puts up 4,530 plus touchdowns and a couple picks and leads them to a divisional title and they win another playoff game, you got to start thinking Trevor Lawrence now. Do you put him in that top 10 echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL?
Definitely, and he seemed to be trending that way. And he's another guy, he's that dual threat. So he's tall quarterback like a Josh Allen, can make plays in and out of the pocket, and they're just looking for him to continue ascend. So Trent Baalke is gathered some good talent there, and we'll see if this team's able to move forward or, wonder about taking that step back that you talked about.
All right, let's look at the Titans. 7-10, down year. Tannehill, inconsistent, got hurt. They went through a bunch of quarterbacks. They turn around and listen. I mean, right now, when you think about it, you draft Will Levis, right? You trade up, you get him in the second round. You make the move for Hopkins. I mean, I don't know why I chose that team, but again, you're thinking about some of these quarterbacks now on this roster. Tannehill, 2022 third round pick. Malik Willis doesn't look like it's panned out. This to me is a team that they're almost reminding me of that 8th seed in the NBA, right? Where maybe you can contend. You're not going to really make a deep run. I believe that Tannehill's on a short leash, right? Given that cap hit and that cap number. I mean, look, you can look at this depth chart, Tannehill, Willis, and then Will Levis. Will Levis, yeah, is your third backup. So I guess the question is, does Levis have a shot here if Tannehill falters, where he all of a sudden jumps Willis, depending upon how they do in training camp and saying preseason with reps, and now he's the backup waiting for Tannehill maybe to get banged up or inconsistent. Will we see this kid out on the field at some point this season?
Yeah, Q, that's a good question. And I've talked to a couple guys around the league, and they're all saying the same thing, that Malik Willis is kind of he regressed, and his roster spot is not secured with them. As surprising as is, the year before he got drafted out at Liberty, and we always knew he was kind of a project, but when he got his opportunities, he just struggled in the pocket and looked to run after his first read. So he's a guy that you wonder, where he is, and you talk about this team in terms of Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's been here a while, and Todd Downing's now his offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, going with the Falcons last year. So there's some flux on this staff, and they're looking for that quarterback, as you were saying. Tannehill was their guy. He had that brief rebirth, but now he's 33, 34 years old, and he's missed some games, had some injuries in the past, and last year was a big disappointment, particularly as his team got closer to that playoff push, finishing 7-10, and build around Derrick Henry. Let's not forget about him. He's their sledgehammer, but we've talked over and over again about the running back position and how quickly these guys get worn down, how much he has left. It's going to be interesting to see what DeAndre Hopkins brings coming over, signing with them. So interesting team, but I think firmly they're behind Jacksonville in this division.
Yeah. What makes me nervous a little bit with Derrick Henry, so you look at his numbers, right? They're monster numbers. He had a really nice bounce back year. We know he's banged up in 2021, only played in 9 games, 16 last year, 1,500 yards, 4.4 yards carry, 13 touchdowns. He's a game breaker. We know that. Okay, fine. 349 touches, right? That's the second most in his career. He had 303 in 2018. He had 378 in 2019, 378 in 2020. Obviously, because of only 9 games, 2021, 219. So if you do the math, you're talking about almost 1,100 carries over the past 4 seasons. That's a lot of wear and tear and tread. So fourth quarter, we know it's so tough to tackle him and gang tackle him if they want, they're playing with the lead, they're playing ahead, they want to run the ball. I'm thinking too, Hopkins is maybe thinking, hey, we got that workman like back. We know he's a game breaker. If they stack the box, maybe that opens up some opportunities for me. Listen, is Hopkins one of these wide receivers that his best years, in your opinion, are behind him? Is he a declining player at this point, or is he serviceable enough where he can get his 75 targets, 65 catches, 900, 1,000 yards, and 7 or 8 touchdowns?
Yeah, Q. He's not the same guy that he was with the Texans, but I still believe that he has a couple good years left in him. He's not at the end, as we saw Julio Jones kind of go down to Tennessee and kind of slow down there. But I think DeAndre Hopkins definitely has some years left and some tread on the tire. I think he's going to work out really well. Treylon Burks, who's had a very solid season last season, coming on at the end of the season, helping this team out. But as we talked about, the key is going to be the quarterback position. Can Tannehill have that bounce back season? And Will Levis is going to be interesting, a guy who transfers from Penn State, and could he he did a nice job at Kentucky, but you want to see how he does with a lot better pieces around him. So there are some things for them to play around with offensively, but they got to also do a better job in terms of their defense, getting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, listen, Levis looks the part, right? 6'4", 229. Titans right now tells you where the odds makers are. Plus 350 to win the division. Plus, I think, 8,000 to win the Super Bowl. I'm not concerned about that. But again, the win total, they were 7-10 last year. They have them markered in at 7.5. That tells me they believe that they really haven't made that jump, right? I mean, because you're one Tannehill hit away from a disastrous season. And to me, we know Henry's going to get nicked up. We know Tannehill's going to get nicked up. Here's another team, even though they're well coached with Mike Grable, I'm going to hammer the under. I don't think this team wins 7.5 games or 8 games. I think they're more in line for 5-6 wins.
Yeah, Q, and that's going to be interesting because John Robinson, their former GM, gets let go, and now they have Rand Carthon coming in there, the son of Reese Carthon, and he's coming over from the Niners organization. And, you know, you wonder if Carthon's going to want to build his own team and his own program. So a lot of these guys with a lot to prove, and if it doesn't work out, maybe they get into Caleb Williams sweepstakes next year.
Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us this edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Follow Lloyd on Twitter at Lloyd Vance, myself at Rich Q on Q. Check out the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. Appreciate all the engagement over the last several weeks with the NFL Talk. You guys have been fantastic. A lot more with the season right around the corner. Colts 4-12-1. They select Anthony Richardson. They go with a corner in the second round. They turn around. They get a backup in Minshew, who is obviously familiar with Shane Steichen with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you had Ryan, Ellinger, Foles. All right, let's start from scratch. Listen, they're telling you we draft Stroud, right? Then we go with a linebacker, Anderson Jr. out of Bama. Then we turn around and we go with a center out of Penn State. Then we turn around and we go with that kid Dell from Houston, the wide receiver. It's like, all right, let me get, and I'm talking about the Texans. I'm sorry. I wanted to get to them. We'll get to them last. The Colts are saying with Anthony Richardson, they're saying, look, we've got an athletic quarterback. We've got a backup. We're going to let this kid kind of grow. We want to build with the defense a little bit. They have some offensive weapons. But again, you know, you get rid of the head coach, you bring in a new guy, young regime, young talent. Is this Anthony Richardson's team to start right away? Or do you believe that, Minshew's going to have an opportunity to win this job? And I apologize again. I'm giving you my Texans stats there for a moment. I got excited about the Texans this year.
It's going to be interesting, Q. But they straight up make sure they're the number 4 pick and get Anthony Richardson. He's their guy coming out of Florida. And the thing is, I watched the combine with him. The ball explodes out of his hands. I mean, big arm. He can run. He plays out of pocket. Reminds me a lot of Vince Young coming out of the University of Texas, but he doesn't have that weird throwing motion. So, very raw, very high ceiling on this young man coming out of Florida. So. I don't think it's going to take long in terms of Steichen building his team around this guy, and I think Richardson's going to be the player that they want. So, maybe you get Gardner Minshew for a game or two here and there early in the season, but in training camp, we're going to see. The thing, of course, with Richardson is can he make the every down and everyday type throws? Is he going to have that high percentage that you want in terms of passing 65% or higher? Because his numbers were a little low in that area in terms of completion percentage at Florida. So I think Richardson eventually will be the guy, but they're very, very excited about him. And the key also is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Can he come back from last season where he kind of had some injuries that he's working through? They obviously have Michael Pittman and some other weapons there as well.
So going back to Richardson for a minute, I mean, look, Matt Ryan last year, 3,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 13 picks. He was sacked 38 times. Ellinger was sacked 14 times. Quarterbacks, Foles was sacked 6. Quarterbacks were sacked 60 times last year. So, you draft a kid that you believe is uber athletic and mobile. Gardner Minshew is really not that type of guy. I think this is his team from the get-go. But my concern a little bit is a very shaky offensive line, right? So that's one of the reasons you get a veteran journeyman quarterback in Minshew, just in case. Again, odds makers have them right now. The Colts at plus 550 to win the division. 6.5 is your win total. I'd be careful with this one, man, because we know this division stinks, but I also look at these teams within a division. All right, how's your season going to unfold? Ready? Jacksonville on the road against Houston, on the road against Baltimore, the Rams, Tennessee, Jacksonville. I don't know. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. If they can figure out a way to get to 2 and 4, you're thinking maybe you beat, Cleveland, in New Orleans, different team, different quarterback, Carolina, young quarterback, New England, who knows? I mean, I'd be more, this is my look, but don't touch, right? Portion of BYP. I think the Colts have something cooking there, right? With some young talent, but 6.5 is too rich for my blood. I wouldn't play the under, and I wouldn't play the over when it comes to the Colts here.
Yeah, that's tough from Q. And maybe I get into Anthony Richardson, rookie of the year prop bet rather than going to that win total because as you were saying, you're just not sure what you're going to get with this team. Yes, they have a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but they only scored about 17 points per
Yep.
game last year. So staff coming in, and I talked about Taylor coming back from injury, and the offensive line was in flux, and we're going to find out a lot because the bye's in week 11, but they have some tough games before them, particularly as we're saying, starting the season, hosting Jacksonville. We're going to see how they are in the division. At Houston could be an interesting game. At Baltimore, really going to show you something about this team, and then they host the Rams. So a lot going on with this team, but they were 4-win teams last year, and you can blame as much as you want on Matt Ryan and has he done or not. But that's just a lot to put on a rookie quarterback to hit that number that you talked about.
Does he start week 1?
I do believe that once he's there's not as many preseason games before, but I think Richardson's just going to provide that spark in training camp and in these preseason games that there's no sense in even putting Minshew out there. It's a totally different playbook, and why not bring Richardson in there? And he's going to be able to get away from pressure. And you talked about the offensive line, and there's some of their struggles. They're going to have 2 new tackles out there, and you got to work those guys in. So why not have somebody that can get away from pressure and kind of use those read option plays to kind of soften defenses up?
So Robinson, the running back, plus 300, Bryce Young, plus 420. Your pick, perhaps Richardson at plus 900 for rookie of the year. Now the Texans, now I can get into my stuff because I think the Texans have a couple things cooking here. You cleaned out the culture, right? The toxic culture. You draft Stroud, you turn around, you get the linebacker and Anderson Jr., you get the kid, the center from Penn State, Scruggs, you get the wide receiver, the local kid. They were 3-13-1. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't run the ball. They were giving up 25 points, but you got a defensive-minded new head coach now in Ryans. And I don't know. I think this team, within 2 to 3 years, they will be a playoff contender. I'm high on Stroud. I've always been high on Ryans. I just think that he needed to get that opportunity. I don't think this division's very strong. Jacksonville will be there. The Titans, we don't know about the quarterback position, right? We just kind of highlighted what's going on in Indianapolis. So I can see the Texans kind of being a dark horse type of team this year. Now, defensively, you got to do a better job. You're giving up 25, 26 a game, but I love the moves that they made. And I think they're going to just let this offense kind of open it up and really let this kid let it rip from the get-go. So I'm high on the Texans this year. I think they can win 5-6 games.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go but up Q.
Yeah,
13-1 last year.
Right.
And
let's go.
Lovie Smith kind of got that job thrown at him at the last second, and the team just could not do anything. You talk about defensively, we allowed 420 points, which is almost 25 points per game, 27th in the NFL. And then offensively, with Davis Mills at quarterback, they're only scoring about 17 points per game, 30th in the league. So, a lot to clean up here, but you do have to like what this team is doing in terms of ascension. I do think that they could hit that win total that you talk about because CJ Stroud is a quarterback in there. Yep. Having that success at Ohio State, can throw the football down the field, and he does have some playmakers with him with Damian Pierce running back and Rex Burkhead on third downs. They bring Robert Woods in. John Mechie III is going to be healthy this season. And don't forget about Dalton Schultz coming over from Dallas Cowboys, a good red zone tight end. So they have some pieces there in place. And as you're saying, they are building something there. Nick Cassar the GM, is fighting for his job, and I think he's going to do whatever it takes to get this team going. And let's not forget, that last place schedule will help. Now, early on, it may be tough. They're at Baltimore week 1, and then they host Indianapolis, and then they're at Jacksonville, and then Pittsburgh at their place. So it's going to be an interesting start to the season to see if this team can get that jump start that you see so often with teams going from worst to first.
Hey, look, Mills threw for 3,100 yards last year, close to 20 touchdowns. They had 5 players, by the way, attempt to pass. 3 were quarterbacks, 1 was a running back, and the other was a wide receiver. I still think the Jags are the most talented, and if you think about it, the most, the best coach team, and that's because of the pedigree of Doug Peterson. So I like them winning division. But I can tell you right now, I just pulled up the Texans schedule, and listen, they closed the season, their last couple games, Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee, Indianapolis. I'm not going to sit here and make any of these bold proclamations, but there's going to be some games in here where the Jets might be playing for a playoff spot. Denver might be playing for a playoff spot. Cleveland in the AFC North, Tennessee, Indianapolis, maybe they're trying to grab that extra wild card, and the Texans might upset the apple cart here. So I think they're going to be better than their 3-13-1 record, but I still like Jacksonville to win the AFC South.
Yeah, I do like Jacksonville as well in this division, but I think Houston's going to be a fun story as well as Indianapolis. You have these rookie quarterbacks coming in there, and they have nothing to lose, and you have these new coaches and their new ideas, and they want to make that splash. So it's going to be a fun division to watch. I know everybody's kind of down on this division, but they do have some young stars. And you talked about what the Texans did in the draft, bringing in those first couple high first round picks, and picking number 2 and number 3. These guys coming in, they have that pedigree. We'll see if they're able to live up to it in the NFL.
All right, couple minutes before we get out of here, we got to get into this running back situation. Obviously, big news coming down yesterday that 4 p.m. deadline, Jacobs, Pollard, and most notably Saquon Barkley, all guys that are just looking at this franchise tag and like, Saquon deciding I'm not going to sign the franchise tag, which would have gave him $10.1 million. Listen, I think we've talked about this for years. The running back position is very devalued. I talk about this a lot with Brandon Jacobs on 27 and QPod. Right now, for those that believe Saquon Barkley has leverage, he's got none. I mean, he's in one of these situations where the plane's going down, you're not piloting the plane, and you have no control over the situation. That's just the God's honest truth. It's lose-lose, right? Because think about it. It's a huge gamble. All right, am I going to play a risk injury, maybe a down year with the Giants, and then boom, all right, who already have the leverage? Or do I turn around, play lights out, shove it back up there, put up ridiculous sick numbers, and even if that's the case, there's no guarantee that the Giants won't give him that second tag, and then he's going to be a disgruntled running back. I understand both sides of it, and I'm talking now objectively. I get both sides of it. Now, from a fan standpoint and being a Giants fan, I think the Giants, they dropped the ball here and they did a disservice. And I don't want to hedge, Lloyd. I hate doing that. But the fact that if you turn down $13 million per year with 19.5 guaranteed, if you turned around what ultimately was another offer on the table, if you can't meet somewhere in the middle for $1 or $2 million, you made 38.6 first 5 years of career. You're not scrambling for crackers at night. You're good to go. I understand what you mean to this offense and this team, but I've also watched this team for how many years now and how many decades, and I understand they never, ever have valued the running back position. They wanted to grind it out, no doubt, but we've seen this over the years, and we've seen it in the NFL. It is a pass-happy league. The Giants went out, they drafted a wide receiver, they brought in wide receivers, they traded for a tight end. Why? Because they're telling you, we want to throw the ball more. Saquon's not going to have 300-plus touches. So the fan in me feels bad for Saquon, but the business side, objective side, understands what the Giants are doing. And I'll say this, and then I'll let you have it. if the Giants, if fans think the Giants right now, their brass is doing a disservice to Saquon, and they're doing him wrong and dirty, what makes them think, even if he has a big season this year, that they're going to turn around and do right by him next year? They're not. They're going to slap that tag again on him, and then you're going to have a major problem. So, listen, we've talked about it. Give me your thoughts. I mean, who's right, who's wrong in this
Yeah.
situation?
You know, I'm not going to say I'm in either corner, but we know it's a business first and
Yeah,
foremost,
yeah, no doubt.
Unfortunately, John Marin and Tish, the owners up there, and Joe Shames, the general manager, as you're saying, they know what the market is for a running back, and they put their eggs, as you said, in Daniel Jones's basket. He beat Saquon to the tape. He's getting $40 million plus a season, and they decided, like it or not, he's the cornerstone of their team. Yes, he had all those rushing yards, and they feel like they can do the read option plays with him. But when I looked at the numbers of the team, as you're saying, Q, Saquon was a huge piece of this offense. He had 1,300 yards rushing. I believe he was in top 10 of the league in terms of overall combined yardage, running and catching the football. And if he doesn't play, that's going to be they're going to have problems in terms of moving that football down the field. Yes, they got the receivers and a couple nondescript. Their receiving core still has something to be desired for, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But maybe they can get this thing done. But I don't think it's Le'Veon Bell 2018 where he's going to sit out the whole season. But you're definitely not going to see Saquon Barkley in training camp, and he's going to be disgruntled. So it's not going to be good in the locker room. It's for the team morale and anything. Um, he's going to have to play on that option, and then on the franchise tag, get his 10.1 million, as you said, and then kind of go from there. But it could get an ugly situation.
Listen, 100%, right? I mean, no disrespect to Brito or this kid Gray, but here's the problem, right? There's two sides of this. Let's just say, play devil's advocate, right? First side is Saquon decides I'm going to hold out. Okay. And he holds out for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. But yet the running back committee is putting up some decent numbers. Okay. They're putting up some decent numbers. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, you know what? This offense is clicking. They don't need Saquon. So now you risk where you're more devalued. And hey, we can win games without you. Or say he sits out 5 or 6 games, comes back and rushes for close to 1,000 yards, 5-6 touchdowns, and has a big game in the playoffs. They get to the playoffs. They win a game. Okay, fine. It doesn't matter, because ultimately, if they tag him again, you're still getting your 22 million. You're getting your 10 and your 10 in back-to-back years. So he's in such a bad spot right now. Remember, Le'Veon Bell, if you recall, when Le'Veon Bell decided to sit out an entire season in 2018, he wanted to get paid like a very unique hybrid type of running back, catching the ball out of the backfield, running the ball. And I believe, too, they tagged him. It was the second time that he was like, I'm not going to do this anymore, right? And he sat out, and his career went downhill. I mean, you can argue he was on that, I don't want to say Hall of Fame projection, but an ascending career because he put up big numbers. I don't know if you have his numbers, Bell's numbers in front of you, but again, I think it's a little different type of situation, because he was like, all right, you're gonna put me on that type of deal. This is what you're gonna offer me. Fine. And then he turned around and he signed 4 years, 52 million contract with the Jets, and that didn't pan out. So if I'm Saquon, you can't speak to the player, but all I'm saying is you ball out, and even if then you don't want to hit the tag next year, you don't want to sign, then the Giants turn around. Okay, if you have an opportunity to go sign with another team, multi-year contract, you'll still be able to maybe get big numbers by the time you're 28, 29. But then you have to pick a team that decides at 28, 29, I want to take a flyer on you. So I think if he sits out, forget about money-wise, you're losing about 565,000 per game. I get what you're saying, and I see where the player is coming from, but it's a pass happy league, man. And all I'm trying to
It
say is,
is.
yes, if you take him off the field, their offensive dynamic, it changes dramatically. It does. But they also offered, I believe I was reading, they offered him a contract prior to dealing with Daniel Jones as well that he rejected. So, and this is something I talked to Brandon with last week. I don't know, think about it. He has basically two agents that are trying to negotiate for him, right? From competitive agencies. So I don't know, man. I think it's a
Yeah.
different story like with Bell back in the day, but I get it, man. He feels very unappreciated and he's pissed off and he wants to get paid. But I don't know. Are you really going to tell me there was $1 or $2 million difference here and they couldn't get a deal done? I don't believe that.
Right. Right. And we always say in the front office have the helm. Unfortunately, it's all about guaranteed money and signing bonus, and then
Bingo.
that's what the players want, and that's how they get their upfront money to plan for their future. Because after that, we all know it's a series of 1 year contracts. So yes, he's going to get the 10.1 this year. He is going to have to come in and ball out and put the pressure on them to sign him to a long-term deal. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. We talk about how running backs after probably age 27 or so, trending towards 30, are devalued. And you did talk how they are building it around Daniel Jones. They have Wan'Dale Robinson coming back from the ACL injury, Sterling Shepard coming back as well. They drafted the kid Hyatt coming out of Tennessee, the
Waller.
Slayton.
Yep. Got
And,
him.
and yep, Waller coming over from the Raiders is huge. They're
Harris
going to try to
Campbell.
get the ball to him
Yep.
and then Isaiah Hodgins, who had a pretty nice season last year. So, you know, they're going to try to fortify that lineup in front of him. And guys, Evan Neal and the rest of them. And we'll see how Daniel Jones does. He had that plan and then they gave him the bag. But,
Yeah.
you do have to feel for Saquon and Jacobs with the Raiders. He didn't sign his contract either. Pollard seems to be pretty happy with playing a franchise tag, a guy who's a backup. He signed his franchise deal, and,
Exactly.
and then Dallas is ready to roll. So, a lot of moving parts here, but it's going to be interesting to see when Barkley reports. It may almost be like, I remember covering the whole Terrell Owens thing when he was holding out in training camp, and the media was there every day. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out.
And remember too, Barkley's top 5 pick, right? I mean, Bell was second round, I believe, second round in 2013. I think it was 48th or 49th drafted by the Steelers coming out of Michigan State. So it's just a different time right now in the NFL, and that's what people fail to realize. The running back position is a devalued position, right? The Giants still have to worry about extending Dexter Lawrence as well. And you can look at the Galladay contract, which was an albatross. There's a lot of looking in the numbers, but on the surface, you say, man, you're really disrespecting this guy, right? Because I went on the air last year. I said I thought he was shot. I thought he was done. And he came back and I had to eat crow. He had a monster season. He had monster games. He carried the ball. He ran hard. He's a locker room guy. He's a team leader. He's the heart and soul and face of the franchise. And he's got to be sitting there saying, man, what do I need to do? And there's so much more to it than just the dollars and cents and the stats, right? Because you had a new regime come in last year, and Joe Shane and Brian Dable, and they were like, all right, prove it to me. Now, if he does it one more time, they're going to slap the tag on him again, and I can't blame them for that. I turn around to play the NFLPA. They decided, look, man, you're going to have the option of tagging players 2 consecutive years. So it's like, they're taking advantage of it. It sucks. It's not always the right thing, but that's just how the letter of the law when it comes to these contracts right now. Because if he rushes for 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns and he doesn't miss any games and he's an all-pro or in the MVP conversation and the Giants win 10 games and win another playoff game, now all of a sudden you do it again. You're like, whoa, this crap, enough of this shit. You're not tagging me now. Like, come on, man. You're really, now you're taking advantage of me. Then I can see, a player like Saquon sitting there saying enough is enough. I think he's too prideful. And I think he respects the sport too much and his teammates because he's that leader to turn around and say, yeah, I'm going to come in. He's not going to do that. And I just don't know, man. if you sit out an entire season, how does that look? The perception around the league.
He's not a bad guy. He's one of the well-liked guys around the National Football League. Fans and players you talk to are very high on him, and a very good locker room guy, as you're saying. And sometimes you may have to play the bad guy, get down and dirty if he wants to get the money that he wants from this team. But I just don't know if it's going to happen, Q, and it's something that's going to have to be monitored all season. Hopefully, he does come into camp and he's ready to roll. But we talked about earlier when guys are sitting out and not ready, those soft tissue injuries just seem to happen all the time. So, you wish the best for Saquon, but both sides are dug in, and we're going to just have to see how this plays out.
Yeah, listen, is it possible that? And I threw this out the other day to my buddy, and he's like, "You're crazy." And I said, "All right, I'll bring it up on the show. Why not? Ruffle some feathers." Is it possible that the Giants, after seeing what Daniel Jones did last year, now obviously you need a running game to set up the pass, but he ran the RPO brilliantly on the ground, Daniel Jones. I've read some people say Barkley carried this team for the last 4 years. To what? Like, what the hell are you watching? He was injured the last 2 years prior to last year. So that's just asinine, right? But is it possible that the Giants thinking right now is, we have our quarterback. We want to make this a pass-happy team. We don't want to run to set up the pass. We'll pass, and if we run the ball, so be it, right? Because we know if you look, when Tiki Barber retired, the Giants really offensively running the ball, they didn't miss a beat, and Tiki Barber came off a career year, and then they won the Super Bowl the next year, and they did running back by committee. Is it possible that Daboll and Joe Shane and the brass is thinking to themselves, we've got our quarterback and we want to make this a pass-happy team, and if we have a serviceable back there or running back by committee to move the chains a little bit and make some plays for us, he's not going to be the game breaker that number 26 is, but we have enough confidence in Daniel Jones where we want to make this team like a Buffalo Bills, like Kansas City. And what do? They throw the ball down the field. And maybe they're looking at Saquon saying, we're not going to need you to touch it 350 times. Is that possible?
And they're always going to point to the Dallas Cowboys, where they gave, Ezekiel Elliott all that money and oh man, our big salary cap number is on this guy, and we do want to be a passing team, and they bring CD Lamb in, and they're throwing the ball to all these other guys, and then you have Pollard step up out of nowhere. They draft him out of Notre Dame, and they say, you know what? maybe we can find somebody else, and we don't need to commit this much to one particular player at a position that's dwindling, a guy that's beat up. And unfortunately, it's permeated around the league. So I think you're probably right. That's what Daboll and Shane are thinking. They say, you know what? Why not try to build around Daniel Jones, get some more pieces around him like Darren Waller and some of these receivers that they're bringing in there, and then go from there. So it's going to be a tough road for Saquon. Yes, he's got the numbers as we talked about, but just the environment in the world of the National Football League at this time, it seems that the running back position, it's just going to be a hard way to go for these guys. The other position, obviously, is safety out there where they're not paying players. But running back, it just seems to be so devalued. And you're seeing all these veterans just sitting out there, and they just have not signed yet.
Dalvin Cook, he's probably going to sign for a couple million, and it's going to be like a house bargain. Saquon last year, 295. And again, I know how explosive and brilliant a talent Saquon is. And I know this offense would struggle. You take him off the field, right? You want to play the run, or it's a dimension, it's a threat. All I'm saying, trying to think like the Giants, and maybe they're thinking, their philosophy is, we want to throw the ball down the field. And to your point too, right? When you look at these positions right now in the NFL, I'm paying for a left tackle, I'm paying for a defensive end, I'm paying for a shutdown corner. And the one thing that's alarming, and I've heard a lot of former players and current players bring this up over the last 24, 48 hours. If you go back 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? DB, defensive end, tackle, guard, quarterback, all the tags, right? The prices, the market for them is going. The running back is right here. It hasn't even, it's flatlined.
Yeah.
And
it went up and then it fell.
Yeah, it's just, it's the philosophy of the NFL now, is it not? Like everyone's like, oh, well, then you don't need to get rid of the running back. You need to run the football. We know that, right? In bad weather, cold weather, playoff weather, November, December, January, everyone knows I need that 2-3 yards. You got to run the football, right? We're stacking the box, try to beat us mano a mano. What they're saying is you need to do that, but I don't need to pay these guys to do that. There's a big difference because they're not looked upon like they were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and Q, they're going to hit the waiver wire. They're going to look for undrafted free agents. They're going to bring these guys in a variety of ways at the running back position. And, drafting a guy in the first round there were, I think, 2 running backs in the first round this year, but the year before there weren't any. So, it's just not valued. And we could go on and on, but
Yep.
we'll see. We'll see how it goes with these running backs. But it's, as you're saying, it's pass happy. They want to spread everything out. It's permeated all the way from high school football to college, now to the pros, where they're going to spread everything out. Even at the in short yardage situations, they're going to spread everybody out and look for a short pass in order to get that first down, rather than line up in a tight formation and jam it down somebody's throat. So it's not the game that you and I grew up with, but we're stuck with it. This is, the quarterback is the marquee guy. It's almost getting like the NBA, where everybody has that sniper and that scorer, and that's who the quarterback is.
Yeah. And the other thing is, stop blaming Daniel Jones. Stop saying Daniel Jones, the narrative. Just stop saying these garbage shots. Just stop, because he carried the Giants this last friggin' season. So I don't want to hear that crap anymore. Dayball set the table, 2-point conversion on the road, Tennessee. Saquon converted it. The tone was set, and away you go. So yes, you're right. It is what it is, man. I mean, that's exactly what he tweeted, right? It is what it is. And you hate to say it, but that's where we're at right now. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But like I said, I think ultimately, when you have no leverage, it's a rudderless ship, the plane's going down, you got no control. It's a shitty feeling. It's a sucking feeling, man. And nobody ever wants that. So,
and they start with Dallas. They host Dallas at Arizona, at San Francisco, and then they have Seattle. So interesting start.
Little dicey, getting a little dicey with the Giants already. Makes for good conversation, though. Of course, Lloyd Vance, our NFL Insider, right here on BYP, kind enough to join us as he does every week. So there's your look at the AFC South, the running back position, the devalued running back position in the NFL. Next week, AFC North. So start prepping, start doing your homework for that one. But we always appreciate a couple moments, pal. Look forward to doing it again next week on another edition of BYP.
All right, look forward to it as we talk about AFC North, the black and blue division. Very competitive.
Yeah, we'll see how it shapes up. That'll be next week's edition of BYP with Lloyd.